Hi everybody and welcome to SDI Coffee Break, and we're again with Pat Bolger from Homebill. Hi Pat.
Hi David.
Good to see you again, and we've been talking long and hard over the last sort of series of vlogs and videos about a new publication that Homebill is releasing, The Path Out of COVID-19. There's been some really great conversation, I think, personally, and we're going to centre on the last one. This is the last of this series, and we're going to centre on or focus on what we term in this one, which is Ctrl Alt Realign. It's really about realigning to the new norm, which is quite interesting actually. And it covers adapting business processes, hyper automation, and support 4.0, which I'm hoping that you'll maybe talk about there. Yeah. And I think reading that sort of Ctrl Alt Realign, well, for me that's pretty much a reboot. Yeah, it's pretty much a reboot. And yep. We've seen people talking about rebooting the workplace, rebooting businesses, and indeed it's what we've been talking about pretty much in this series, pretty much, isn't it? So you mentioned Ctrl Alt Realign becoming more relevant than adopt, adapt, and improve. Now that's really interesting. We touched upon it on the last one, and I think I like that way of thinking. And we did touch upon hippies. I might not look like a hippie, Pat, but sometimes I feel like I should be more like a hippie, right? So, so if you look at the current best practice frameworks out there, everything that's out there, right? Do you think they'll become less relevant through COVID-19? And if that's the case, how long for? Are they less relevant forever, or is it just a phase? What do you think about
that? I'd say they're not less relevant, but they're probably a little bit dated for what we've just experienced now. I mean, there's no question that some of the kind of principles of IT service management, they've helped us out of all sorts of holes, but it doesn't evolve. These things don't evolve at the rate where they actually have to. And then when you get a crisis like this, and basically that does cause a complete reboot, you've then got to think, actually, how do we take ourselves forward with this? So one of the things that every business is going to be facing is this increase in remote working. I mean, how long we need to do this for, but we're stuck with this situation for 12 to 18 months minimum, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that this period will go down in history in terms of business as the point of which the way we work and the way we use technology for business purposes was changed forever. I think that's going to happen now. Now, if that is the case, you then need to think about how you're approaching things. But with remote working on the increase, you're going to have a broader scope of the services. You're going to have increased levels of complexity and security that need to be actually addressed. So we can't really just stick with the old ways of doing things. We need to rethink our service delivery and our support models. So I think the challenge for most IT shops is that, if you're adapting your business process in an environment where you've got very little change, you occasionally need to tweak a process, you need to change things. That's one thing. If you're adapting in an environment where it's change again, and where that's happening with different parts of the workforce, that's an entirely different matter. So the whole idea of kind of getting others to configure stuff for you, that goes out the window. You have to be able to do this stuff yourself, and you have to be able to do it at speed. And over the next little while, I think we're going to have to evolve as an IT function. IT functions are going to have to evolve to a much greater level of maturity and much faster than we ever had before, because the old ways that we're doing it are too slow, they're too expensive, and they just don't deliver the results that organizations are going to need as we go through this. So I think applying a set framework or methodology because it worked in the past won't necessarily make the same level of sense. That's not to say you throw it out, but you've got to be thinking in new ways. How do we become faster? How do we enable people to do things that we wouldn't have been able to enable them to do before? And let's face it, what we've seen with this crisis is everything is possible.
You're absolutely right. And you saying that, it's interesting because we, people like you have talked about embracing different ways of doing stuff forever. So if you think about Fail Fast and all this stuff, and you look at what the DevOps movement is doing, and then you look at the old school change process and how they also conflict and stuff like that, and SIAM models, and it's almost as if I almost feel as if the time for talking is done. I almost feel as if we need to stop talking about it, and we need to start really just reinventing stuff. Let's just start
Yeah,
with
well,
reinvent. What could go, what worse could happen? Is there anything that worse could happen? You know what I mean?
well, the whole idea of, and you see the challenges. I mean, the IT service management community and the DevOps community, they were just butting heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody cares whether it's ITSM or DevOps. They care about whether the stuff they've got functions and whether you're introducing technology into the organization that's making life better at work for people. Yeah. And that's what this is about. So I think if we stay kind of entrenched in that old ways of thinking, it's going to be very, very hard to implement the level of change that needs to be implemented over the next little while at the pace that it needs to be implemented and without having to rely on other people to do it. So pulling out my ITIL 4 foundation book and reading through that is not necessarily great. I'm not saying we throw it away, but we have to think of new ways of enabling people. And I think some of the technology that we've used in the past is just not going to be fit for this new normal. It has to be a faster way to do it.
And I think it's the thinking as well. Do you know that sort of, you nailed it there, right? It's the old thinking of we can't because. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or the IT's been seen as the people who say no in an organization. Yeah. Because of the constraints that we just talked about. And how that sort of is managed in an organization, you know, in a way which is more kind of productive, more negative than it should be. So it's really interesting, man. And I'm again hoping that, you know, that'll be part of the way that we rethink what we are over the next few months beyond that. So you mentioned in there as well that ITIL doesn't have all the answers, and I think that's fair to say. Right where we are now, that ITIL hasn't got all the answers. So where do you think we go and find those answers? Where there are gaps? Is it as easy as picking up another book? Is it as easy as, I don't know, looking for something else on the internet? What does it really mean? What does it really mean to find the answers that maybe some of the frameworks like ITIL might not have in there right now?
Well, I think the first thing is that's part of our problem is that we go straight away looking for answers. Right? So if you want the answers, you've got to ask the right questions. What are the important things that we need to be tackling now from a business perspective to ensure that we deliver the most amount of value we possibly get? So park all your frameworks, park everything else for this point in time, get to understand what your business needs, when it needs it, and how you can actually deliver it as fast as you possibly can, then move on to the next thing. That's what we're looking to address here. And there is no one framework that actually gives you the answers to that. And each business is individual. So yeah, I get it. Good practice, fantastic, great. There's no sense in making mistakes that other people have, but your businesses are different. So a one-size-fits-all strategy that you can approach everything with, regardless of how non-prescriptive it is, you have to tweak and tailor it to the needs of your own organization. So what I'd say is before we go looking off for frameworks and answers elsewhere, are we asking the right questions? And who are we asking them of?
Yeah, it's a fair point. You know, I think you're absolutely right. It's a lot softer, isn't it, when you think about it? It's more human, isn't it? It's more about the relationships rather than...
And it's simpler.
Yeah, it's simpler. It's not simpler, actually. What about, you also talk about in the publication about hyper-efficiency. So the hypers are used a lot at the moment, I think, you know, between hyper automation, hyper this, hyper that. What about hyper efficiency? What do you see that as in an organization?
Right. Well, hyper efficiency, I mean, if you look at the way we do things at the moment and the way things have been done, certainly for most organizations, is that the amount of waste. I mean, we talked about enterprise service management earlier. The amount of waste that's going on with, as an employee, I can be going into my office in the morning, I have a problem at the gates with security. I can drive there and I struggle to get in through the door. I can have a need to interact with 3 or 4 different business units by the time I get to my lunchtime. And that is in the old world, so I'm not going into an office now. But regardless, even in the new world, I'm still going to have to interact with these teams. And basically the way that you approach that and how you actually deliver that interaction is different. So if I'm engaging with HR, is go to this page here, fill out this form, email it to so-and-so. If I'm interacting with IT, oh, it's this service portal over here, that's how you do it. It's bewildering for your average employee to have to be able to do that. So if you had one place where you could basically interact with any business unit, and that business unit is able to basically respond to you in the same way. And if the way I interact with IT, HR, facilities, legal, etc., is relatively consistent, you're going to see that happening with your service portals, because basically that it's not going to become a myriad of different options you have to use. So I think that's key to the whole thing, is basically having a consistent employee service experience right across your organization. And IT is best placed to lead that charge without a shadow of a doubt. But we won't do it by looking at kind of IT problems in an IT way and looking to reduce our workload. We have to be looking to deliver additional value to our employees by doing this and serving them. That's the whole purpose. Let me give you an example. So we had one of our customers, London Borough Waltham Forest. They started using our IT, home built for IT. They started using that in the IT function. And HR coming to them saying, look, it's a bit of a mess here. We're using kind of all the stuff we mentioned previously. We're using paper-based forms. Managers need to go out and fill stuff out on the intranet. They don't have the time to do it. We don't get the information that they want. So basically, nobody knows what's happening with requests. There's a big pile of emails that we're trying to stay on top of. Stuff gets lost. And the IT function said, look, let's help you out with some sort of service management capability here. Now, but the difference is, this is where modern service management, I think, comes into its own. IT got them off on the right footing and then just transferred the knowledge they need to control the tools. This point and click stuff like Visio. And once they were underway, within 6 months, these guys had reduced the amount of information that was duplicated by 74%. There was something like a 47% decrease in the number of forms that they actually need to use, because most of them moved online. More importantly, they reduced their time from saying, hey, I need a new hire, to actually recruiting someone and starting them within the organization by 36% in 6 months. That is where value's at. Yeah. That's where it's at. You do that and you can, and you talk about marketing. There's no better way of marketing than solving someone's problem and then telling them what a good job you've done.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah. And if you can back those up with quantitative stuff as well, you put some figures to back some of that stuff up. They scream loudly, don't they? That type of stuff.
They certainly do.
Resonate. Last question then, Pat, before we finish on this one. As part of any business reboot, right? As part of any rebuild, we talked about it, right? What would you delete forever? What would you delete forever? Right? So think about stop, start, continue across people, process, technology, culture. We're rebooting. We're deleting. We're getting rid of stuff. What would you delete forever?
I would say silo mentality, and silos get a bit of a bad time. They're the bad press for silos, but I think silos are necessary, absolutely necessary. You think about an IT organization, but you got development, you got the application people, you got kind of security, et cetera, et cetera. These guys have got a specific kind of thing to do. So it benefits them to work together. It benefits them to share their knowledge with each other because they've got specific things to do. The problem is that silo mentality takes over, and then it becomes about us addressing our own targets and doing our own things in our own way so that we meet our criteria. So if I was to delete anything, silos stay in because they're necessary, but silo mentality needs to go. And why are we doing this? Why are we doing it in this way? Does the organization need us to do it in this way? Can we do it faster? Can we do it cheaper? Can we automate it? That all of those things we need to reconsider. And I think silo mentality holds us back. So I'd delete that.
Yeah, and I think I agree with that. And fingers crossed, I think we might get there, I think, based on what we discussed and how, how minds like yours think we should be moving on to address this over the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Good.
Yeah.
Well, it's been, go on, sorry, Pat.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we talked about kind of the market being reshaped. And I think that what we're seeing now is organizations with a decent and strong digital strategy, they hadn't waited for this. I mean, we had some, as I was saying, we're expecting some projects to be cancelled, which they weren't, but some postponed. But we also saw, as organizations with that strong kind of digital strategy are basically saying, hold on a minute, we're planning to do this in December. We need to do it now. And I think that's the type of IT organization that's going to survive and thrive in this new economy. And for businesses then, any business that is not prepared to move at that pace and actually strong digital footprint, and not only just the digital facade where externally their customers see these wonderful digital services, but internally So it's not backed up by analog teams. Those are the businesses that are going to outpace and outmatch the competition, and they will be the ones who actually dominate the market as we return to kind of a more normal recovery.
Yeah, good. Excellent. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure to do this series again. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to do the series sometime soon. Thank you very much. Now, you'll have the listeners will have a chance to download the copy of this. We'll put a link to this here, and there'll be an awful lot of stuff that we'll be talking about in through all those usual channels, all social channels about the publication. So everybody will be able to read that and digest it, and hopefully use some of that thinking as well. It's been a pleasure, Pat. Thank you. Thank you for our listeners as well for joining us in this series, and hope you've learned something, and we'll see you very, very soon. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.